The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
It is official. Bradley Beal is a member of the LA Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast.
The Clippers have gotten Bradley Beal. He has reached a buyout with the Phoenix Suns that will be stretching his contract over the next 5 years at $19 million per year. He was still owed $110 million, so he's giving up that $13.8 million or whatever it is to come to the Clippers. Because, he's gotten paid enough. So he is going to be coming to the Clippers, going to be reacting to the move, and then the pros of it, then the cons of it, and then what the starting lineup and rotation possibilities could look like. But man, oh man, ladies and gentlemen, I am back from Las Vegas, one of the times of my life. I feel like I told you guys all the major conversations I had with Clipper people. I didn't mention it, but I also got the chance to meet Kobe Sanders and Kobe Brown on the last night, late at night at the Aria. So that was pretty cool. So to say I went into this trip having not actually formally met any of our players, even though I talk about them and I'm like, what's the word? What's the right way to put it? I have one of the biggest platforms of any fan, if not the biggest of any fan, right? Does anybody else have a bigger platform across all platforms? I don't know. But you guys can put in the comments who you think. In terms of fans, I know we have like Adam, radio, and, guys like that, beat writers that get more views and stuff probably. But fan, I don't know. All I know is it's crazy. I hadn't known anyone. That sounds so arrogant when I say it. But I was trying to make it as factual as possible. But anyway, point being, I didn't know anyone, and then I met Jason Powell. I already knew Dante Jones a little bit, but I reminded him who I was, and so now I feel like he'd always recognize me if he saw me. Chris Dunn now knows me, Derek Jones, Brooke Lopez, and of course Kobe Brown and Kobe Sanders. So pretty awesome. But we got to talk about. So, by the way, Summer League, very much recommend it. But, I was told all throughout Summer League that this was going to happen, and the news comes out that we're signing Bradley Beal. First off, the money, $5 million per year. We'll absolutely take that. $5.5 million for Bradley Beal, who was just making $50. Bargain. For people that think Bradley Beal's like bad at basketball now, you, one, weren't watching Suns games, and two, have extremely high standards, because anybody that's averaging 17, 3, and 4 on 50, 39, 80 splits, right? And last season, if you want to go a little bit more in depth about the shooting, a guy who shot from 56.5%, which was a career high for him in 2-point range, shot 76% at the rim from 0 to 3 feet, 54% from 3 to 10 feet, and 50.5 from 10 to 16. So his only areas that were under 50% were threes, where he was 39, which is still really good, and then 16 feet to the three ball, inside the three ball, he was at 42%, but he only takes that shot 12% of the time on average as of last year. So all those shooting splits, he's still a very good player. And I don't need to name stats to tell you what Bradley Beal is good at. This is a guy. Again, another guy, I've never missed a playoff game of his career. I've watched every playoff game of his career from game 1 against the Chicago Bulls in 2014. And let me just tell you, I'll never forget in my Facebook post, back then I was on Facebook like that, I remember saying the NBA playoffs are so great. After game 2 of that series against Chicago, where the Wizards upset the Bulls 4-1, I said about Bradley Beal, the NBA playoffs are so great because for those of us that don't have League Pass, we can watch every nationally televised game and realize how good guys like Bradley Beal are. So I actually, for those that don't know, and maybe some of you know because you remember how I told everybody I love John Wall. I was my favorite Eastern Conference team outside of whatever team LeBron was on, because I really did like LeBron a lot at the time. He was my favorite player for a while, which for those that listen to Dime Dropper are like, what? Yeah, I know. Long story. We can talk about that another time, but I really liked the Wizards back in the day. And so I was seeing their journey. And then personally, I think the Bradley Beal before John Wall versus after is very different. So I want to talk about that real quick. By the way, so just to make a very clear statement, good move for the Clippers. Now, what's going to happen next and how we use everybody, that is where it gets complicated, that I'll talk about next. But in terms of you're putting a name, we had 9 rotation guys at this before this move, right? We have, let's say, the starting lineup from last playoffs, which was James, Chris Dunn, Kawhi Leonard, Zoo, and why am I blanking? Norman Powell. Okay. Right? So you have those 5 guys. Oh, no, Norman Powell's not on the team anymore, so I'd take him off. So let's replace him with John Collins, right? Slide everybody down. So those are our 5 guys. Then off the bench, we've got Bogey, which makes 6, Derrick Jones Jr., which makes 7, Nico 8, and then Brook Lopez 9. We don't think Amir Coffey and Ben Simmons are coming back, and we know the young guys are probably going to get into the rotation. So we need another backup guard. Bradley Beal comes in. If that's your 10-man rotation, just like those guys, and then order and lineups TBD, my bad, I shouldn't say order, rotation and amount of minutes TBD, that's a really solid 10-man squad. Yes, we're old. Yes, we're a little slow, but you've got another big 4 essentially. And yes, people are going to say let me get to the Bradley Beal part next, because there's going to be skeptics about Bradley Beal, of course, not probably from our fan base, but around the league. Now, it seems like all the national media people are agreeing that, Bradley Beal slides right in for Norman Powell. He is getting $5.5 million a year. His production actually wasn't that bad. It was the price that he was, or the amount of money he was getting paid, that made it look so bad. So this is a home run for the Clippers. That's what a lot of media guys I've seen say on socials today. And I saw Shams Charania, Malika Andrews, they were speaking highly of it on ESPN. But let me just talk about the other side, which is that people are going to say, well, the Suns were a colossal disappointment the last couple of years. Bradley Beal had some part in that. Let's talk about that for a sec. So when John Wall started going through injury issues, the Wizards were terrible, right? And so Bradley Beal essentially got a chance to just go off, to just be the number one option. Because before John Wall was the face of the team, he was the number one option. He was the guy that had the ball in his hands the most. In 2017, which was, I think, when the Wizards should have made it to the conference finals, they lost that 7-game series to the Celtics, who were the 1 seed, but still, Isaiah Thomas led them. They didn't really have that same continuity that the Wizards had. Be a great series to rewatch, by the way. But John Wall and Bradley Beal were actually tied for the scoring leader on that team. So again, like John Wall was 7th in MVP voting and was averaging 11 assists along with those 23 points. So when John Wall got hurt in 2018, he only played half the season. Bradley Beal played all 82 games and averaged 23 points a game and was an all-star. And the Wizards made the playoffs and lost in 6 to the Raptors. But in the next season, it all started to change because that's when Wall was really hurt. Again, 32 games. Beal played all 82. He averaged 26, 5, and 5.5 assists and was the real man, but their team was garbage, right? And my friend Will Johnson always says that Dana Altman told him when he played for him, the bad teams still have a leading scorer. So that doesn't mean much. We know Bradley Beal was a good scorer.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Maybe the Cincinnati Bengals do. With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Bradley Beal finally gone, waived, soon to be stretched, and the era is over.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast.
The divorce that took forever to get done is finally finalized. Beal, it feels like the one that took the bigger hit in the divorce, right? Because he gave up however many million, but I guess the Suns will be giving up 20 plus million over the next couple of years as well. So, see ya, Brad. Sorry it couldn't work out better than we all thought it might.
So ultimately, Beal gives up 13.86, I think is the exact number, million.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, to make this possible, we've gone over it before because of the EJ Liddell and Nasir Little wave and stretches that the Suns previously did to make some other moves happen. They had a limit to how much dead money from Beal's contract that they were legally allowed to have on their books. He had to give some money back in order to make it all work out, and he gets a contract from the Clippers, which is the destination that had been in the rumor mill for a while now. Only basically the taxpayer mid-level or so. I mean, I don't think that's actually what it is because I'm not even sure if they're a tax team, but $5 million-ish, 2-year deal with the player option on that second season. Let's just start with that little part of the news and then zoom out, I think. Is it crazy that I was a little bit surprised that that's all he could get on this contract?
Well, no, man. And this is the thing that I kept on fighting with some other people about. I'm like, oh, he could get out and go get the full mid-level exception for multiple years. Bradley Beal, statistically, right? Good basketball player. If I'm not mistaken, like almost had a 50, 40, 90 season. Again, didn't play a ton of games. But that's my point, right? Bradley Beal is a good player to have, but he kind of is what he is. He's a microwave scorer. We're not sure if that's on the bench or in the starting lineup, and that right there is a problem in itself. Like, how much of an issue is this going to be if you're going to invest as much money as you are with a mid-level exception, potentially over multiple years? Is he a starter? Are you going to get stuck with him? Is that going to look like a bad contract a couple years from now? But it's the bigger thing. It's like, yes, Bradley Beal is a fine player when he plays. Not a good defender. And there's just like not a lot of places where that would work. The Bucks, I feel like they already went this route with Dame Lillard. Now, maybe they wanted to go down it again differently, but like that doesn't seem like it works. The Lakers, we saw that kind of floated out there. You're going to throw him out there with Luka, LeBron, and Ayton defensively? Like that's as bad as the Suns would have been defensively. So the Clippers made the most sense, and I think at that point it's supply and demand.
Yeah, I the health is definitely the reason that he probably got the deal that he did. I just thought, closer to the full mid-level for one season was kind of where I expected it to go, but ultimately he hasn't played away because he hasn't.
Sorry, I was just going to say he hasn't played 60 games in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons.
Yeah,
is he going to get more healthier?
It's always something. No, he's not. But so. He goes to the Clippers. He gets all of his money anyway, so that contract didn't really matter in the sake of his wallet. I just thought it was interesting from the standpoint of his value, but it obviously closes a chapter for this team, a pretty momentous one and a very disappointing one. We all obviously could admit the trade I supported at the time. I've gone over it. You and I both have. I've always distinguished it as mistake versus misguided. I think that the Beal trade was a mistake. I think that the DeAndre Ayton trade, I think the DeAndre Ayton trade was more misguided. The intent with the Beal trade made sense. They didn't ultimately give up a huge amount, even though it was maybe more than people even expected Washington to get. And then once you just saw it on the court, it never worked out. What are your thoughts as we say goodbye to this kind of Big Three era and the Beal era here in the Valley?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I think the way you put it was really good because you mentioned at the beginning, I was for this, and so was I. I thought it was a slam dunk. Shamet, Chris Paul, bunch of first-round pick swaps that will likely never get exercised, and a bunch of second-round picks that like are currency in the NBA, but we saw the Suns just get 5 back in a KD deal along with players. Those can be had. What pisses me off is when people go after the Suns for doing this deal, when they themselves wanted this deal done as well. And there's multiple accounts that I've looked up, just Bradley Beal on their account, and went through the archives and like, oh, you were actually for this trade too. You loved this trade until it didn't work out for you. So it was a mistake at the end of the day. And I could say that too, although I was for it. In hindsight's 2020, probably a little too much redundancy in the offense. Shouldn't have looked over the fact that he doesn't play a lot of games. But I'm not going to condemn the Suns on this fact alone for trying, especially at the time with what they gave up for Beal. Didn't feel like a lot. And that Suns team, everyone forgets, man. Chris Paul felt like at that point, plays a little slower, feels like he started to wear out his welcome. Everyone hated Landry Shamet, and he gave up some picks that, yeah, man, it sucks. But I appreciate the swing. But at the end of the day, it didn't work out. I just wish more people would say that. I was for it. It didn't work out. It was a bad move. And I don't think a lot of people are being honest with the Bradley Beal saga.
Fair enough. He's gone no matter what any of us say at
Done.
this point. I think that the part of it that I will say was misguided, that in hindsight probably was one of the reasons that it, not probably, it was one of the reasons that it failed, is not negotiating the no trade clause out of his contract upon his arrival here. That would have been, it was just overlooked at the time because you just assume it's going to, hey, he's just going to play. Why would you want to think about flipping a player the day you're getting him? It just wasn't part of the conversation. But given the relationship between the Suns front office and his agent, which is well documented with Josh Bartelstein working here, and the fact that, you know, the Suns were on his short list of teams. Obviously, he waived the no-trade clause to come here in the first place, all that sort of stuff. I think the Suns should have pushed harder for that and envision the fact that, hey, KD's pretty old. We have a small window here. Brad's contract's really long. We might need to get out of this sooner than we realize and give themselves more outs than they did. That was certainly a mistake. But, yeah, look, I think the final like summation of what I would say on this is, I think that Beal, you can't separate the injuries from the performance on the court, because the deterioration of his body is what led to him not being able to be the player stylistically that the Suns needed him to be to fit with Devin Booker, to fit with Kevin Durant. He just lost the ability to drive and finish. He wasn't able to consistently defend, especially bigger players, which he needed to do in a, three-guard lineup a lot of the time with Grayson Allen out there too. Things like that just, they never were there because physically he couldn't or didn't feel comfortable trying to do it. And that is the part of it where in hindsight, it's like we could have seen that coming. And that's maybe the biggest bummer of it.
Do you think the Suns are going to regret stretching and waiving Bradley Beal?
Yeah, well, that's the other part. I mean, what do you think? Because I think you switched over to the side of not wanting this to happen a little quicker than I did as the offseason progressed. So I feel like you're probably more negative on this being the final call on their part than I might be.
Well, let's see here. Here are the positives to moving off of Beal. There's a very good chance that maybe he was just a cancer in the locker room and didn't get along with players or didn't get along with staff. And like, that's just a bad thing to have. Like, ultimately it feels like they were done with the Bradley Beal experience. So I get it from that aspect. And you don't have to struggle with the fact of like, you're either sending him home or you're sending him to the bench. So like, those things are good. And I'm not going to act like there are no positives to sending Bradley Beal out of here. I just think it outweighs the negatives, man. You're talking about $20 million, $19.6 million, whatever, a year until I'm 32 years old and I'm 27 now. Like, hopefully I have multiple kids at that point to where we're still talking about paying off Bradley Beal. And what's going to be frustrating, man, in 2 years from now, you and I are going to talk about some player being available. We're going to be like, man, wish we could get that guy, but we're paying Bradley Beal $20 million. I just don't, if I was for this, if there was a corresponding move that made sense for the Suns, even at least this year, but I don't think it's like a death note, right? I just think it's making something that was a big problem for the next 2 years a slight a slight to medium-sized issue over the next couple of years. That's where I'm at. I'm not making it a death note. I just don't get it completely.
We've all been there. Logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, Game Time Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. And with Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
A surprising offseason for the Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast.
Man, if Chris Livingston's going to keep playing like this, what do you do with him? And even mentioned, is it like, can you bring him back on a two-way? And instead, the Bucks bring him back on a standard contract, a one-year deal. So as it sits right now, the roster's at 15 players. There's still options for flexibility, which we touched on and can get to in a moment. But your thoughts on seeing Chris Livingston back in the fold?
My first thought was the same thought as many everydayers I've seen on social media tagging you and just being like,
what a day.
Your boy is back. Justin's guy is back. But no, I mean, we've had the conversation so far throughout this offseason about the roster and if there's anything quite missing on the roster. Like, I feel pretty good about the guard rotation, the big rotation. It's been the wing for me that's been a little bit of a question mark, just wanting some more size there at the position outside of Kuz and Taurean Prince. And here comes Chris Livingston back into the fold again. And after his summer league performance, I've mentioned he just looks so much stronger than everyone else out there on the court. He's very adept at using his body to get to the rim. He's quicker to shoot the three, and he's been shooting that and knocking it down at a higher consistency in summer league than we've seen during his short stints on the big roster, as well as even in the G League, because if memory serves me correctly, I think he's been like a 33% three-point shooter in the G League with the Herd, somewhere around that range. So it hasn't been necessarily great. So seeing him knock down the three at a higher consistency, seeing him play faster, again, he's still a young player. There are still things that, he's making mistakes with doing, but he's playing at a speed and with a strength that says, like, there's something here worth continuing to take a look at. So I'm cool with it. I'm very cool with Chris Livingston coming back. Also fits into the youth of the team of just bringing back another young guy on the team, the roster. So I'm here for it.
I was obviously very, very happy with the news to bring Chris Livingston back in the fold. It's been a pretty strong summer league, to put it mildly, for him. And you touched on the physicality that he's been playing with. I guess the way I would put it is, he has looked exactly like he should look for being in his third go round in summer league. That, like, this is what you want to see, is a guy that looks like, he's clearly one of the best on the floor in this situation. And we've seen a little bit of growth, and he's more physical, that he's adapted to that style of play much more than, rookies or some guys that are getting their second taste of summer league. So on that front, everything you needed to see, you saw it. I know people questioned too, like, well, was this an impulse move or a reactionary move of, wow, he's looking really good in summer league, I guess we got to bring him back here. And I mean, I think it was kind of known, which we'll get to in that John Horst piece. There's some things we're going to have to do to give ourselves some more flexibility, but that doesn't mean we're closing the door and locking it on some of these guys. It's saloon doors that are going to swing back open here. And for Chris Livingston, the 4 games, averaging more than 20 points per game. You mentioned the 3-point shooting 38% on threes. There, a bulk of those have been corner, but just as we said with Andre Jackson Jr., find what works and just excel at that. And we've seen the averages are about 5 and 2, but we've seen some pretty nice rebound and assist games from him as well. What does this mean, if anything, for the rotation next year and his chance at cracking that?
I think from what we've seen with Doc Rivers, guys are going to have a chance to compete in training camp. Like if you can come out in training camp and show that you are the best option, you're going to get into that rotation. Because I mean, last offseason we spent a lot of time talking about how we thought AJ Green was going to take a step. AJ Green, AJ Green, AJ Green,
Yeah.
and to start the season, he was not in the rotation. And Doc mentioned later on that in training camp, he got outplayed. So to start the season, he was out of the rotation. As the season went on, practices and whatnot behind the scenes, seeing what was working on the court, he found his way back into the rotation. And now we're setting up for a year for AJ Green, where it's like we're expecting really big things this upcoming season after the work you laid last year. And I think for Chris Livingston, it's a situation when you look at who's in front of him at the three, you have, like I said, Kuz, Torian Prince, and really him. Andre Jackson Jr., if he continues to be on the roster here, we'll keep an eye on that guarantee date for his contract. But there's a chance for competition. I'm not saying like he can go on and be the starter, but maybe he could. But I could see a world where Chris Livingston finds himself, in the back end of the rotation if he's able to show in training camp and whatnot that like I'm ready for this moment. I'm ready for the moment. But ultimately, again, I like having options. I like having young guys you can throw out there to see what happens with the physicality, with the speed that he likes to play at. So I think it's really all in Chris Livingston's hands of what comes next for him.
And the interesting part is we may well find out that the 15th spot ultimately came down to a battle between Andre Jackson Jr. and Chris Livingston. They're both on the roster as of this moment, but there's certainly, I would say you're not out of the woods yet if you're one of the Ajax stands and pushing for him to make the roster, especially with some other rumblings we'll get to in just a second here. But I don't think there's any denying that Andre Jackson Jr. is a much better individual defender right now than Chris Livingston is. And he probably will finish his career as that and be a better individual defender. But I think Chris Livingston's game is more rounded. And we kind of had that same discussion about one of the names you mentioned moments ago, AJ Green, that look, AJ Green has this elite skill set. Andre Jackson Jr. bordering on an elite skill set as well, but AJ Green can do more on the other side of the floor than Andre Jackson Jr. can. So that I think was another one of the big appeals. And obviously, his size, like we've seen the Bucks experiment with Chris Livingston quite a bit the last 2 years of he played small ball 5 in summer league last year. We've seen him play some of the 4. He really, size-wise, his best position is going to be a 3 in this league. He has pretty good wingspan. He's 6'6", but he's still pretty boxy in his movements. And that's the challenge with the 3 and defending those spots. That and consistently knocking down threes. If he can do that, then as you mentioned before, then you got something that you can continue to develop here. So I do think it was important to say, okay, let's not just close the door on this and let's see if we can continue to nurture this throughout the season.
Yeah, because as we've mentioned in years past too, of just how important player development is going to continue to be for NBA teams, especially with how the new CBA is putting a stretch on teams, and you don't want to exceed the second apron because of all of the handcuffs that come with trying to build your roster out. And with that, player development is going to continue to be of the utmost importance to be able to find those gems. As I heard Marcus Johnson say on the Here District, find the gems in the gym. Like that's what you have to continue to try to do. Because one, we're going to talk more about it of just getting younger, playing faster, and all that goes into that. But also being able to have these contracts that are really reasonable on your books to continue to go forward while you're building around a superstar like Giannis is going to be super important. So if you can hit on some of these guys, like it goes a long way, which is why I look at the Ryan Rollins story, the AJ Green story of like two-way guys who turned out to be able to be part of the rotation for this team. You got to keep hitting on those margins and trying to find young talent you can develop into rotation pieces.
Yeah, and depth, an important piece, especially in the regular season in an Eastern Conference that we've said is up for grabs. But there's going to be a lot of teams fighting to stay in that top 6. So your depth becomes important there for those 82 games as well.